You are already the person who has the best audio. Um,
Good. Yeah. I've got my mic set up. I'm a audio freak. So totally. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So already having the best audio that I've heard before with a special guest. So the reason we're here today is because I had a student so we're Manor ISD. So we're Manor. Do you know where we're at? Like where we're located?
Right outside of Austin, if I remember correctly from my UT days, right?
Absolutely. So we are right outside so we're right outside of Austin. And the class that you're speaking to is an audio video class. So we have some students who are here in person who are seeing you on a 65-inch big screen.
Oh, gosh.
And then over my shoulder here, we have a studio. So studio control room. Like it's a pretty nice facility.
That is awesome.
So this is where we've been doing our work. But I had a student who says to me, "Mr. Getz, we need to have a NFL photographer speak to the class." And I'm kind of like, NFL photographer. So I'm thinking like, who do I know in sports media, sports video? And the, your name popped into my head. Um, so tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. And to all the students watching, man, what a year for you guys. And I'm so proud of what you guys are doing right now and just stay with it. Hopefully, things, do return to normal. So, shout out to you guys. Shout out to the teachers that are also sacrificing so much. So, I'm Raheel Ramzanali. I was born in Pakistan. And my family moved here when I was 5 years old to Houston. So I'm based out of Houston. I've been in Houston my whole life outside of the 3 years I was at the University of Texas in Austin. And I love the city of Houston. So we moved here when I was 5 years old. And the way I assimilated with the culture, being a kid who spoke no English, I was 5 years old. I have an older brother and older sister as well. The way that the boys in the family assimilated with the culture is with basketball. So we lived in an apartment complex, and the one place where all the kids met up was the basketball court. And it wasn't even a court, it was more like a parking lot with almost like a peach basket, like you see in a lot of apartment complexes. And that's where we learned about other cultures, other people. That's where we made friends with people outside of our South Asian descent. So I fell in love with basketball at an early age. And I'm going to fast forward. I went to school in the Houston area as well, played basketball. And I figured out my junior year that there was a freshman point guard starting over me, and I probably will not be playing D1 basketball, but I loved basketball, right? Like I still wanted to be part of it. And I thought long and hard, how can I do this? So what came to mind was, how about sports journalism? How about, covering sports and talking about sports, specifically basketball? So that's how I got into the industry. And I've been working in the city of Houston at various radio stations and TV stations since 2007, the year I graduated college. And that's just a quick overview of who I am. And of course, we'll ask some questions a little bit later about that journey.
Thank you so much for that. So we were able to bring up kind of your LinkedIn profile, and LinkedIn is the website for people 17 years of age and older. And the way I pitch it to my students, why it's interesting, is that you can look at LinkedIn and see kind of a professional's, kind of journey, the different things that they've kind of done. And I attempt to have them create their own profiles
Good.
and to kind of be on it. So let's take it. Let's take it back to the beginning. I mean, so you said in high school you were playing basketball, and then kind of looked at kind of how far you would go as an athlete. What was high school like in terms of was there like a student newspaper? Was there kind of yearbook in high school? How was high school for you?
Yeah, high school. So I went to a high school in the Sugarland area called Clements High School. And in the area, it's renowned for its education. And it's really hard. It's a really hard school because there's a lot of students there that excel in educations. I was not one of those students. I was the opposite. So I played basketball and football as well. Ran track. So I was always dedicated to the athletic side of things. And that, just naturally, I just love sports. And there was a yearbook committee, of course. There was a student newspaper and TV station as well, but I never got involved with that in high school because I was just so busy with sports. I just never got around to it. And then my senior year, I was part of the PALS program. Do you guys have PALS over there, which is Peer Assistance Leadership Services, I believe?
I
Which it,
haven't come across
yeah,
that, but we do some things with communities in schools and Gear Up and College Forward. So there's a few things like that.
similar, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was involved in that, but like even when I would play in student intramural games, when the TV station or the student TV station would come by, I would always try to get on the TV. Like I was always trying to be in front of the camera, and that was always in the back of my mind. Now, outside of high school, this is where it's interesting. Like I want to talk about passions real quickly, right? Like what your passion is and how you can make it a career. It was always a passion of mine to listen to the radio. I loved listening to the radio. So whether it be, top 40, R&B, hip hop, talk radio, my parents listened to a South Asian radio channel as well, and I would prank call that. So I loved the radio. So I mean, literally, I would sleep with the radio on. And one of the things I really wanted to do was be on the radio. And I kept that in the back of my mind. When I went to UT for broadcast journalism, it was always about TV. But when I got there and I took a radio class, I was like, man, I would rather do this. Like, I would rather talk about sports because you get more time to do it. You can be really creative on it. And then you can interact with people as opposed to the news where it's, hey, I'm reading the news. This is the news. And that is it. Right. So that was one of my passions. And I took that passion and I always had it in the back of my mind again. And I said, man, I would love to do this. Why can't I be on the radio? So think about the passions that you have, right? Whether it be the radio, sports, how can you make that a career? How can you make that something you can excel in college? Because that's the time to do it. There's other times as well. And sure, professions change all the time, but think about these passions. And I always tell this when I speak to any youth group that think about your passions, write them down, right? Like actually put it on paper so you can see it. And then start digging into careers that you could do with those passions. And also look at people's jobs and people's careers you like, admire, and want to do, and see what their background is as well.
So that's awesome. So in terms of some students here are looking at college, they're thinking about college, like that's a thing.
Mhm.
And then some students may not be as interested, may not be looking at it. But to speak a little bit to both. When we had met, we were both at University of Texas,
Yep.
so constantly around Texas student media, around KVRX, Texas student television,
Yep.
just around a bunch of different students from different disciplines, students who weren't even radio, TV, and film, students who weren't, necessarily, in journalism either, kind of coming together around a collaborative project.
Mhm.
What advice would you give students who are like, I'm going to Texas Tech or I'm going
Mhm.
to UT, or what would you say to that
Yeah.
crowd?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is, I mean, look at the school you're going to, right? And I believe some students have already been accepted, right? Or most have been accepted or right there. Look at those universities. And if it's not the University of Texas at Austin, just say, I'm not going. Okay. That's my first piece of advice is do not go to any. No, I'm just joking. Look, I love UT, and it was great for what I wanted to do, which was broadcast journalism. And they have a great program there. But look at the school that you're going to and really look at what extracurricular clubs and activities that they have. One of the first things I did when I got in was I looked at, hey, is there a sports radio station? Is there a student radio station where I can get some reps? And sure enough, there was, right? And most colleges have that. And look at the things that you're interested, research it ahead of time. Don't wait when you get on campus. Start right now. Start looking at which clubs, which extracurricular activities you want to be a part of, because you're going to meet a lot of interesting people to learn from in those activities and in those clubs as well, or student radio stations, TV stations, all that good stuff. You're going to learn from them. That's the best part. There's going to be a lot of talented students on campus. There's going to be a lot of talented kids that you may meet throughout college, right? So go join these clubs. And I'm just calling them clubs, even though they're not clubs per se, but join these, right? Start that research right now, take full advantage of it and explore, right? Even though you might think you want to be a journalist, which is great, and you might want to do weather or sports or whatever it is, go explore and explore through internships, right? Go try to get some of those internships. There's a lot of different internships out there. I know it does get a little bit harder now because some don't pay and some do pay and all that stuff. But even if it's shadowing for a week, right? Go do that. Go see if you want to do it. And I was lucky enough that I interned pretty much every summer break, every winter break, spring break. I never went on a spring break trip or anything because I was always interning. And the reason I did that was, one, it's great for your resume. It makes you stand out, right? But two, it's also great because you get to experience things that you wouldn't just in a classroom setting, right? So I quickly realized when I was interning at a TV station that I don't like spending all day at that point in my life, writing 3 stories and then I get 3 minutes and that's it. And I just didn't like that. I was like, you know what I do enjoy when I do radio, and I do enjoy that a little bit more. So maybe I'll pursue that angle from here on out. So really go take advantage of all the experiences that you can have in college.
Nice, nice, nice. One of the things that I really, like about Manor ISD is we're not one of those, school districts that's kind of like, we'll put a billboard up and be like 100% college admission,
Mm,
So I mean, it's good. I mean, it's good and it's bad. The good side of that is kind of I'm able to teach kind of like a rock stars with day job like approach. I'm able to do kind of like a side hustle, kind of approach. So it's like, hey, this is, kind of um, a couple different plans. So it's good talking to somebody who had done some work with the XFL, because
mhm.
it's kind of like, okay, you have the NFL, you have whatever 100% college admission, but then like there's other ways too. So speak
Yeah.
a little bit to kind of like, you know kind of having, kind of two jobs, or kind of having multiple hats, or what does
Yeah.
that kind of mean to you?
Yeah, so I'm happy you asked that because I want to bring up one thing. So we'll talk about networking in a second. This will all tie back into networking. But it's funny you mentioned that because in 2007 I started, and I was so lucky. I got a top market job out of college, working in a sports radio market that I wanted to be in. I love the city of Houston. I didn't have to leave, which was great. But like most jobs, especially entry level gigs, I was barely making any money. Anytime I took a step forward, there was like 4 steps back, it seemed like, in my career. And I just got burnt out, right? Like I was in my dream job working radio in the Houston market, but I was just tired of it. And on my side, while I was out of college, and now don't laugh at me, but I'm so old that when Facebook first started, it was only for college students, right? If you guys have seen The Social Network, that movie and all that, it was literally for college students only. So I had a leg up on the competition that I knew how to use Facebook when it went mainstream. So I always focused on the social media side of things as well for the radio station, and I became their social media manager, quote unquote, when that job wasn't even a job. So I did that on the side, like in addition to my duties and all that. And when I got burnt out with radio, I was like, well, why can't I do this for another company? Why can't I get paid to actually manage social media profiles and manage, a business's digital footprint and all that good stuff? So I actually transitioned out of radio to a social media manager role in 2010, 2011, and did that for the next 4.5 years and learned that craft to where I could learn it and apply it to sports radio. So I took a 4-year break, learned about that with my side hustle, which was social media. Then I made sports radio my side hustle, and I always kept my foot in the door. I did some side shows and all that good stuff. And then when the opportunity was right, I was like, you know what, I'm ready to go back in. And the way I stood out from other candidates when it came to working at ESPN Houston was I could actually do their digital marketing and social media marketing and help them take their station to the next level. And we did just that. So always, keep something on the side, not only because one, it just keeps you sane, right? Like when you do the same thing over and over and over again, you get burnt out. Like take it from us, take this advice. always keep that side hustle, right? And number two, you never know if that side hustle is going to turn into a career. The other thing I've always loved doing, you mentioned the XFL, was I love hosting events. And one of the cool things that happened was the XFL had a team here in the city of Houston, the Roughnecks, and I reached out to a mutual contact and a friend I've worked with before with the Sugarland Skeeters, which is the Astros minor league team here in Sugarland. And I was like, hey, man, what can I do with the Roughnecks? You know, like I want to do something. He introduced me to who would become my manager a little bit later on. And I was like, hey, I want to do something with you guys. I don't know what it is, but I want to be involved. And he's like, well, how about you do our stadium MC job? Like, why don't you host the games? Because you love events and you obviously know a lot about football and sports. So my boss, Bert Emanuel, who, if you Wikipedia him, there's an actual NFL rule named after Bert Emanuel, which is awesome. Like, he is the coolest dude ever.
So when
So
you say, so just so I understand, so when you say, you said your manager or you said your boss, I mean, are you saying
mhm.
that that is a person like at the location, at the facility, or are you saying that's like an agent or something like that?
No, at the Roughnecks. So yeah, sorry, I'll use better terms. That's a great point. So Bert Emanuel was my direct boss at the Roughnecks, and I interviewed with him, and he's the one who's like, hey, you know, how about Stadium MC? Why don't you audition for this? And I did. I didn't hear back from him for a month, and then my little sister, was getting married, and on that day he called me and he's like, hey, you got the role. And I was like, thanks, Bert. I actually got an email from HR yesterday, so I already knew I was going to get it. So thank you so much. But yeah, so like I found out through an email that I got one of the biggest gigs, which was awesome. So it was, yeah, he was my boss at the Roughnecks, but we met through a mutual contact who was Jay Lucas, who did some PR for the Skeeters and then also for the Roughnecks. So networking is really important in all of this, in your side hustles and in everything you do in your main career. Networking is big. So I used my network. I'm gonna go back to my social media job. So when I left radio, I worked for a really small company for almost 2 years, got laid off because financially they were just not making enough money. So they let everyone go. So I'm left without a job. I don't have a career, right? Because I left sports radio, what I went to school for. But one of my friends in radio, Ken Hoffman, is really good friends and wrote a lot about Tillman Fertitta, who is now the Rockets owner. And he sent an email on my behalf to Tillman for a social media manager role that they had open. And sure enough, I literally got the interview the next day and I landed the job the next week. So that networking that you create and you keep doing, that's going to be really important in the success of your career.
So take us to the kind of year, kind of when that happened here. So that was around.
2000. So if you go show three more experiences, it's way back. So it's yeah, it's right. If you go back, so you see 1560, that was my first role out of college. So I did that for 4 years, and then I left to Consumer Media Network, worked there for 2 years. It was one of my favorite jobs ever. And then one day they laid off everybody. And then I landed that social media role with Landry's right after that.
Oh, hold on
Uh,
a second now. Okay,
yeah.
so Landry's Restaurant is in doing social media for how many Landry's or for
Oh my gosh, it was too many. The answer is too many. So I did Saltgrass Steakhouse, Bubba Gump. Which one was the other one? Landry's Seafood, which is one of their marquee brands as well. Mastro Steakhouse. I did all of um, their boardwalk stuff. So this is more like in the Galveston area, Kima boardwalk. So they have some amusement parks as well. So I did those. Rainforest Cafe. Now that you brought that banner back up, I did that as well. So it was managing like 60 accounts. Okay, it was hard. It
okay,
was
so you're saying
horrible.
that during that time period you were a social media manager
Yep.
managing the social media, so like Twitter, Instagram,
Yeah.
Facebook, or like how many different like
So
platforms?
all of their Facebook locations. So Saltgrass Steakhouse, let's say, has 40 locations. So I was doing all of their locations, Rainforest as well, Bubba Gump, all of that stuff. So it was crazy. So now I actually, and again, I keep in touch with everyone where I used to work, and I have great relationships. I never burn bridges because you never know who you're going to work with. They now have a team of 6 people that focuses on their social media. At that time there was 2 people. It was me and another lady doing everything. So it just shows you like how much it's evolved on the social media side when businesses take it seriously. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, so I was doing all of that, and then I was recruited to join this medical company that I leave it on my LinkedIn, but I was literally there, I think, for like 6 months. I don't even remember. Yeah, like I was there for 7 months. If you see, I was recruited by them because I was getting exhausted of working at Landry's. So this company reached out. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna, give you X amount, and you can come on over." And this is where I was like, "Cool, absolutely. Like, yes, I'm there." And I would finish that job. Like, I would get to work at 9 a.m. By 9:45, I was done with my work. So I just started getting bored at work. Like, literally, I
Oh
was
my
bored.
gosh.
And that's where, but that boredom was great because that gave me a chance to kind of, like while during the day, get in touch with sports radio people, kind of interact with shows, listen to more shows.
Yeah.
And that actually helped me get my ESPN Houston job because, I saw an opening. I was like, hey, I think I could add some value to the show. And the GM at the time at ESPN Houston, his name is Todd. He was a sales guy back at 1560 the game. So he was just another guy, right? Like, but I always kept in touch with him. I always, shot him an email, and he was like, "Hey, why don't you come interview for this opening that we're about to post?"
Is that
And that job was because of that networking again. So networking again is really, really important. Don't forget that. So that's where I went to ESPN Houston, and then from there, my career just jumped to the next level.
nice? Nice. What if we were to, kind of going back to high school, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like in terms of advice, kind of advice that you might have. What we have is, so I've got freshmen through seniors. Some students have some time left. It's been a bizarre year in terms of the
Yeah.
pandemic. But if a student has access kind of to, an iMac, to some cameras, to some DSLRs, to some microphones, like if you had to do it all over again, what advice would you give, or what would you say students should be doing or be thinking about?
Yeah, what I say you should be doing is explore, right? Like really explore what you want to do and try doing it. All the students that are watching that are there in person, you're lucky because you live in a time where you could literally learn how to shoot a newscast, shoot anything, learn how to read a prompter, learn how to produce a sports radio show, launch your own podcast within one day. Like you can do all of this. You have everything at your disposal, which is great. So take advantage of that. Like really, if you're interested, you can try it, right? And you can do it yourself right now and see if you're interested, right? In addition to internships. So don't be afraid to try things. Like I go back and watch some of my high school stuff. Like my buddies and I, we would take my dad's camcorder, and there was a prank show on MTV. I don't want to say the name because I don't want you guys to go look it up and then do what I did. But we would like recreate stunts from that show. And I go back and watch it. I'm like, this was so dumb, but it also helped me. Like, hey, I like doing this. I like shooting. So I like, filming stuff. I like editing stuff as well. So that helped me focus a little bit more in college that like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. So why not, get good at it to the point where I could use it as a career as well. So I would do that. Like go explore, experiment with things. Don't be afraid, like you don't have to show the whole world. I know we all live in a society where we think we have to show everything. You don't. Like there's a lot of things like how I practice for stuff. I shoot it myself, I watch it, and I delete it. Like you can do that yourself and see if you like doing that or not. The second thing, what I would tell my younger self would be, don't be afraid to try new things. Like what I just told you. I wish I had done even more in college. Like I wish I went all in on podcasts. Right. I was podcasting my radio shows back in the day, but I wish I launched my own podcast and not just a rehash of my sports radio show. So I wish I would have tried more things when I was younger in college and even after college. And the other thing would be just to have, have more fun. It's okay. Like you're allowed to have fun because I always interned. I never took any time off because I was so worried about not getting a job after college. I was like, how can I stand out? And now I look back and I'm like, man, I was in Austin for 3 years and I never went to Barton Springs until I graduated college. I never went to Lake Travis until my senior year. Right. So I wish I had taken more time to enjoy that ride that you're on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So students, if you have questions, kind of in chat, throw them in. Now is
Mhm.
the time. You could do a private chat if you want to, or you can just do a public chat for everyone. That's totally appropriate. And then, Raheel, do you have any questions? Kind of for our students today.
Yeah, I want to know if any student can answer this. Like, what's been the number one thing you've learned in the last year? And I was looking at y'all's timelines as well, which is really cool. That's awesome. I hope that stays up for the rest of their lives because that'd be so neat to go back and look at it, right? 10 years from now. I wish I had that in my high school years where I could go back and look at, hey, what was it like in 2003? What were my feelings, right? Like, because all my emails, my old email address, which was an AOL email. I don't know if you guys know what AOL is. I know you, but students probably don't know what AOL is anymore. But that email's been deleted. So like all my high school, emails and thoughts and feelings are now gone. But I would love to see that timeline. Like I hope you guys get a chance to look at it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, just to remember what you were going through, which is really cool. And then I was looking at the timeline. By the way, I don't know who it was because I didn't see any names on this one, but whoever put up the Russell Westbrook jersey, you're awesome. That's great because he's my favorite NBA player right now. So I love that. So shout out to that person who had the Russell Westbrook jersey saying it was important to him. That's dope. So here is a question. Was there a point while studying your career where you thought maybe that career wouldn't fit your expectations, or were you always confident about it? So I was always confident that like I was going to entertain people, whether it be sports radio, sports TV, anything else. I was always confident in that. But yes, there were moments where I thought wouldn't fit my expectations. So if you are thinking about doing sports radio, sports television, sports podcasting, whatever it may be, here's the dirty little secret about it. You're not going to make much money for a long time. Unfortunately, it's an industry, and this is something I've been trying to change within the jobs that I have. It's an industry that uses a lot of intern hours, and it's an industry that uses a lot of like, oh my gosh, I'm here hours. And what I mean by that is they'll hire producers at minimum salary just because they can tell them like, look, you're working in sports radio. This is great. Who else can do this? Right. Like you're working in sports radio. You're like, okay, that's fun for the like first 4 months until you're like, I can't afford to live anywhere. Right. So when I found out some of the initial salaries about working in sports, I was like, ooh, this kind of sucks. Like, I don't want this. And that was actually another reason why I left sports radio, was because I was like, I'm not making enough money, right? Like I'm thinking about the next point of my life, the next chapter, excuse me, like where I want to get married. I don't have enough, and I want to focus on that as well. So there are some moments where you hit that, but then again, if you're good at what you do, if you like what you do, you get through those tough times, and eventually that money will come, which is great. But there are moments where you doubt it a little bit.
Yeah, there's a little bit kind of the kind of the feeling that somebody who is in radio or somebody who's on TV is
Mhm.
either famous or rich or both. But
It's neither sometimes.
so another question that popped up, it said, "What were the what were the XFL games like, and why did it end?"
Yeah, the XFL games were a blast. So for those of you who don't know what the XFL is, it's a football league that was started for spring football. So it wasn't in direct competition with the NFL, but it was started by the WWE, Vince McMahon, all those guys, and they just wanted spring football. So they picked 8 cities. Houston was one of them, and it was awesome. Like the games were a party. So I would say it's a mix between college and the NFL games. Like NFL games are more, they're more uptight. You're not partying as much, quote unquote, as opposed to college games where it's like one big party. So it was like it met in the middle of that, where the football was really important, the games were fun, but it was also a party. And I'll give you some lessons what I learned from that. And why did it end? It ended because of the pandemic. They suspended the season March 11th, when most everything in this country shut down. And then we fast forward a month. They said, okay, the season is officially off. And then fast forward another couple of months, and I get a bunch of text messages saying, sorry, man, I can't believe this happened. And I'm like, what happened? They actually went bankrupt, and there was a bunch of stuff behind the scenes that happened. But now The Rock has bought it and his group, and I think they're bringing back the XFL next season, from what I'm hearing. I haven't had any contact with anyone, so I don't know The Rock before anybody asks. But that's why it ended. It was because of the pandemic.
Our previous guest speaker had worked for South by Southwest, and
Oh, cool,
in March of 2020, he was let go from South by Southwest,
man.
and yeah, pretty tough times there
Yeah,
with the pandemic.
absolutely. Yeah, it was really hard, and it was so much fun though. Like, these games were cool. The people that were working, the team that I worked with, they were some of the nicest people. And I've actually, so now I'm doing stadium hosting for the Houston SaberCats, which is a rugby team, part of Major League Rugby. Austin actually has a team, and they actually just beat us a couple of weeks ago. But the reason I got that gig was because one of my coworkers worked with me at the Roughnecks, and she was like, "We have to bring Raheel in." Like, absolutely. So that's another gig, going back to networking. When you're nice to people, when you network, get to know them a little bit, and you're good at your job, you're gonna hopefully get that recommendation from somebody. So now I'm doing some games for the SaberCats, and it's a lot of fun as well, because it's a European party. Okay, it's just people are wild at these rugby matches, as expected. So it's also fun.
So one of the I worked for somebody who was a rugby player, and he had said once that the ground can't grab you is one of the things in rugby, but I don't know if that applies to football as well. So basically, if someone's like on the ground, you can't like grab somebody who's
Yep.
like running over you type of thing. Do I have that right, or is that
Yeah, you're right. So once you're down on the ground, there's like a gentleman's agreement that, okay, we've already stopped the ball's progress, right? So it's a lot like soccer, football, basketball mixed together. And again, like, I've been watching it for 3 years, and I still don't know enough about it, but I do know enough that once you're down, that's it. Like, we're gonna wait. You're gonna hand it off to your teammate, and we're gonna advance the ball that way. So it's pretty cool, like the gentleman's agreement. And it's fun to watch these guys like just beat up on each other, and right after the match, they're so respectful. And they usually have now we're not doing it because of COVID-19 protocols, but usually after, there's a big party, like both teams party together, their fans party together, because you just had this huge battle, and you left it all in the field, and now you're like, cool, we survived, let's go have a party together. And whoever won, the best man won, can't change that, so let's go have some fun.
So, to review, students, we have talked about passion to career. We have talked about when Raheel would crank call radio stations.
Yeah.
He said to write your passions down. He said to attempt to shadow somebody for a week. Networking is important. And then one of the things that I did like that he said when he was looking for jobs or applying for jobs, he said something about how he could add value to the team. So, or add value to the job.
Mhm.
So kind of looking around at different things and be like, hey, I can add this piece, potentially turn into a job. We are to explore. We are to try. We don't have to show everything. So it's okay to be deleting some things and experimenting. But then again, to have fun as well. It is my intent, sir, to turn this into a YouTube video and then have that as a little bit of a teaching resource. So I'll send you a link before I publicize it,
Yeah.
very far and wide. But any closing thoughts or any tips, tricks for the class of 2021?
Yeah, you guys are going to do great. I promise you, whatever problem you're facing right now, when you're thinking about your career, it's going to seem so small in 4 years, in 8 years, in 12 years, right? Like, I am in that place when I look back, and I'm like, man, what was I stressed out about my senior year of college? Like, why was I stressed out about that? When I fast forward 18 years almost, and I go, it wasn't that big of a deal. So I promise you, it feels like a big deal. It's not that big of a deal. Things do work out. Work hard at your goals. Don't forget that. None of this matters if you don't work hard and get good at what you want to do. Because if you do that and you do get good, people will recognize your work. In any field, it doesn't have to be in broadcast. You will be recognized. You will be successful. And be kind to people, because those relationships that you make along the way, one, you'll be able to help somebody, and two, they'll be able to help you. So don't forget that. Be kind to everyone. You never know who's going to end up where and how you could end up there as well. So definitely do that. And last thing, if any of the students ever have questions, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm readily available. I love answering questions. If you ever just want to sound off an idea, please do it. You can find me on Twitter at @the_Raheel. If you just look up Raheel on Twitter, I should be the first account. There's an author out there, but I think I surpassed her. So yeah, take that, author Raheel. I don't know who she is, but I think I did surpass her. Hopefully I did. But definitely do that. And then on Instagram, my handle is Raheel Doing Things. And if you just look up my name, it'll come up as well. So yeah, please do reach out. You can tweet me, and then I will respond right away.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am attempting to manage a hybrid space here, which involves feedback sometimes occasionally. Please, round of applause. Thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you
rest
so
of your day,
much.
sir.
All right, y'all have fun. Nice talking to everyone, and best of luck.
Thank you so much.